Welcome to Season 2 of the Crypto Pulse podcast, your ultimate guide to the world of crypto, Bitcoin, and world economics. We're here to guide you through the crypto universe with thought-provoking topics, in-depth knowledge, and information to help you make informed decisions. We'll also be interviewing some of the best minds in the industry, such as CEOs of crypto projects, traders, economists, authors, and development teams from around the globe. And now for the episode.
This episode is brought to you by Yield App, an innovative digital wealth platform that allows you to earn passive income on the world's leading digital assets with a single click of a button. Visit yield.app for more information. Hi, Grant, Nick, welcome to Crypto Pulse. It's great to have you both here. It seemed like a really good follow-on from the episode we did with Paul and Francesco. So maybe, first of all, you could just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this space. So Grant, maybe you'd like to kick off.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Grant Gerber. I'm the Chief Governance Officer at Kaddex. I got involved in crypto being at least aware of the space right in college. Both of my roommates at the time were mining Bitcoin and using it to do fun things on the dark web, which is what initially sort of was like, there's stuff going on here.
Are we talking Silk Road or are we talking not quite as...
I know they were very upset when that guy got arrested, so I'm sure it has something to do with that.
Disappeared.
I never got questioned about anything, so I don't know. But my more recent involvement has sort of been with the advent and the rise of DAOs. I started participating in DAOs sort of in like end of 2020, early 2021, which is not very long. But I really just fell in love with this idea of like a very fluid workspace where anyone can like enter and exit different organizations at will and like contribute where they want to, and just, you know, really looking at like how we approach work in a different way. And I've really latched on to that and what it can do for the world.
I love that. And what about you, Nick? How have you got involved in this space?
Yeah, so Nicolas Ramsrud, I'm the CEO of Kaddex. Really happy to be here. I love talking about, we talked a little bit about this before we went live here, but I really love talking about anything Kadena, but Kaddex in particular. So really happy to be here. My crypto journey, it's kind of funny to hear Grant talk about Silk Road. That's kind of where my interest started in crypto, because I saw all over the news, you know, this whole thing about the Silk Road happening. It going down, these weird digital currencies called Bitcoin, and that's what started my interest. And my interest has been in the tech of it and just totally captured by the possibilities that it drives. And that was right around the 2015, I think, was when that happened. So up until, and it had been just an interest of mine up until about 2020 when a good friend of mine sent me the Kadena white paper and, you know, asked me if this was BS or not. And I started reading it, and I soon, once I got to the page where it talks about the solution to scalability being the graph theory implementation, at that point I was kind of skeptical because of the overhead costs that multi-chain systems have. But then once I got to that point, I had to actually set down the white paper and walk away from it, because I was totally like, this is it. And from that point, that was in 2020, middle of 2020, I just had to get involved in Kadena in some fashion because of what it allows in terms of enabling truly scalable blockchain applications in a proof of work network. So that was kind of my obsession. And then I had the opportunity to join the Kaddex team. And here we are trying to bring the new generation of scalable DeFi to the world.
I think Ben and I had that same kind of like wow moment when we were interviewing Paul and Francesco from Kadena, because I, like, not being a techie, but being in the crypto space and being an entrepreneur and I built businesses, I kind of had this like rough understanding of the tech. But when I sort of really understood how they were doing it from a layman's perspective, it really blew my mind. And I guess that's probably why it's not been on our radar from last year. It's because now it's becoming more mainstream and people understanding what it is rather than just the tech is. More people have started to build on it, and we've seen that with the grants program that's being launched as well, which is pretty cool. But let's talk about Kaddex. So tell us about what you're building. And we always say the best crypto projects and platforms solve a problem. So what are you building and what problems are you trying to solve?
So Kaddex, we're taking more of a DeFi full stack approach in general. And that's kind of our longer roadmap kind of discussion. But in particular, the first thing that we're tackling is creating the framework for a scalable DEX that can scale into the future, that brings immediately the onset of new, novel approaches to DeFi that solve some of the worst problems of it, right? And that's all around the accessibility of DeFi and making it easy to use, but also in terms of the gas problem that most DeFi systems have, where you require the user to pay for their own transaction costs or the costs of interacting with the protocol. And that requires this just really cumbersome thing of a user having to, even if they have one token, I need Ethereum in order to trade. You don't have to do that on Kaddex. We subsidize costs. This is a feature of the Kadena infrastructure using gas stations so that users just don't have to worry about gas costs in order to interact with it. And then it's being scalable really allows us to create something that gas will never be a problem. Transactions building up in the mempool are never a problem. And that's really what we bring.
Nick, I have a question specifically around decentralized exchanges, because we get a lot of listeners that are curious about sort of the future of decentralized finance and the way that the space is moving. But the big thing that I get asked a lot is what's the key difference between a decentralized exchange and just your average centralized exchange, and why is it important that we kind of focus on building that decentralized style of trading?
Well, I think that goes back to the premises around what crypto was all about, right? The Bitcoin ideal, which was money for the people, by the people, to solve the problems that people have, right, with the current financial system. And DEXs, I think, are just a logical extension of that idea, whereas users have access to all the financial tools that they want in order to manage their own finances in the way they see fit, right? The regulatory landscape has kind of shaped this problem a little bit, in that you have to take certain steps to make DeFi sustainable, right? So a lot of the DeFi we see today is really made for crypto natives. You can't, somebody that just has their Bitcoin or Ethereum on Coinbase doesn't realistically have any access to DeFi, because it takes such a mental leap to get there. And that's kind of what we're trying to solve, right? We're trying to make this something that is really simple and accessible to everybody, so they don't have to really care about what goes on in the background. And that goes back to that idea of a gas station where we pay gas fees, right? We're not going to require a user to have Kadena in order to trade on our platform. They can have just any Kadena network token and trade, and we'll handle the rest.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I would say it's one of the biggest problems with some of the DeFi platforms out there now is that my mum, she wouldn't stand a chance, like some of these products are really complicated, and you actually have to have an understanding of the technology behind it before you can even interact with the DeFi platform. Do you see that as kind of like the core thing that you're doing differently with Kaddex? Is you're kind of really just trying to make this as simple as possible to use?
Yeah, when we were really like coming down to what we wanted to achieve, like we all had this at the beginning. We all had this idea of we want to make simple DeFi, we want to make scalable DeFi. But when you really start to like break down the problem, you saw that it all really rolled back technology-wise to scalability problems.
Right.
Scalability problems require it to be very complex to the user, and that is like on DEXs where you have to go to the AMM pair specifically and trade against that AMM pair, you have to understand things like slippage. You have to understand impermanent loss if you're providing liquidity, right? All these things, we want to abstract that away from the user, and it's only possible because we have a scalable infrastructure that is Kadena, right? Where we can do things like our DEX is this hub and spoke model where every token is traded against Kadena. Now, that allows us to consolidate liquidity to make more efficient markets, right? But that would mean that if a user wants to trade one altcoin to another altcoin, it would be 2 trades. Well, since we subsidize gas, we can handle that. So the user doesn't have to see any of it. They just select what they want to trade and select what they want to get in return, and we handle the rest. So these are really like the steps in the framework from which we're approaching the problem. Is let's make this as accessible to users as possible, because that's going to be the next wave of users that come into crypto.
Yeah, right. I mean, exactly as you say, when we think about like Web 2 products, the beauty and elegance of those things is about all the complex stuff that goes on behind the scenes, right? I mean, for the average user, they don't want to know, the complexities of it. They just want to know that it works.
Yep, exactly. And that's what Kadena really offers. I mean, we're talking about, the DeFi application, but the greater vision of what Kadena offers is Web 2 business logic now really possible on a scalable multi-chain network, which is, it's like I'm still wrapping my mind around this and what it's going to be capable of doing. So it's truly exciting.
What's the process been like building on Kadena? Like, because it's not like it's something that's been around for a long while. So what's the support been like, and how has that gone?
It's been, it's a learning experience, right? We weren't able to pull from a pool of developers that knew Pact. So it was all pulling from people who were interested in learning something new. So they all immediately had this energy of like, we are pioneers, let's go do this thing. But the onboarding of learning Pact has been very swift and efficient. And we're in the midst of auditing right now and are seeing just the security and the ease that it provides developing. But then the problems unique to Kadena are that scalability becomes the application's problem instead of the infrastructure's problem, right? So it's up to us to figure out how to make best use of it. And so these are, we've had meetings with Stuart Popejoy, the CEO of Kadena, and talking about different ways that we can approach this problem. And it's all like the fun problems that you have to solve, right? It's all the things that you're looking forward. We're not going to have scalability concerns in the short term, but boy, I'm ready and excited for when we actually do start running into traffic problems and we have to do something about it and scale across multiple chains. So it's been a real pleasure.
I think something that Nick just said really actually stuck out to me, which is that scalability on Kadena isn't the infrastructure problem, it is the individual application problem, which is just simply not how other blockchains work. Like Kaddex can essentially, if we decide to deploy onto every single chain on Kadena, we're theoretically able to achieve like within Kaddex the exact same number of like transactions that Kadena is. And we can essentially span all of these various liquidity pools across different chains, and essentially scale the actual application incredibly well, which is simply not possible on other layer ones. You're always going to be limited by the total throughput of that layer one.
And that's the problem is going to be how do we continue to abstract that complexity away from the user, right? How do we maintain simplicity so the user never understands that they're like interacting with many chains at once? So that's going to be a problem for us to solve.
And it's a beautiful problem to solve.
Yeah, that's a problem that I don't think any DEX has solved at all. I mean, all of them are pretty clunky to use. All of them are relatively complex. And even I think some of them are quite complex. And I'm like reasonably okay with how to use them. So
yeah. I was going to say, and I actually don't think a lot of these DEX have had the opportunity to try and solve that because their layer one blockchains are just not scaling, so they'll never have come up against that problem.
No, and it's something that we're growing into this idea, right? We truly are pioneers in that we're we're having to solve problems that have never been approached before. And it's taken the traditional DEX framework and idea to another stage of complexity where you do have on-chain and off-chain technologies working together to create something that solves all the problems, right? So it's not just going to be something that is fully on-chain. If you leave it just fully on-chain, then the users have to figure out how to utilize it. And so having something that is a front end that has a back end support structure that helps route traffic through this web of chains is going to have to be, the future of DeFi on Kadena.
So where are you guys in terms of the build and the roadmap? I did have a look on your website earlier on today, actually, but maybe for our listeners, you could tell us like where you're at and what the next stages are. Yeah,
so right now we are in right smack dab in the middle of auditing our DEX code right now. And as we approach launch, this version 1 of our DEX platform will be fully functioning. I mean it. It's going to have everything from our staking program, liquidity mining, the booster program, which is the way that we handle, we incentivize liquidity pools and handle things like impermanent loss coverage, things like that, as well as our DAO stack. So our DAO stack is another complete separate side to this whole thing. When we're talking about DeFi sustainability and long-term vision, the DAO is just about as important as any of this. So that'll be launching as well when we launch in the next couple of months.
So it's a couple of months till the big launch where people can go on and start using Kaddex.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about the DAO then, because that's one of the questions that we had for you. Let's take a bit of a dive into that and why that's important and how that works.
Sure. Yeah. So I can give like sort of a summary of the, I guess, like 3 main applications within the DAO and then how it all ties together. But when doing research into other DAOs, we've found that there has been a distinct lack of one, like a good voting system for users. Typically these systems just say like, okay, well, majority token holders have majority votes, which of course leads to a tyranny of majority where the whales essentially just control the overall protocol, which isn't a problem if there is a system of trust wherein the whales can all be like completely trusted individuals. What I've seen so far is that the vast majority of our community is a trustworthy group and have no malicious intent. On top of that, there is also this weird sort of occurrence that happens in DAOs where people contribute to the system but receive only, I guess, like financial recognition in terms of if they want to apply for a grant, they apply for a grant, it's written, they receive funds, they build it, that's that, then they go to another DAO. It's not really like building a community. So we've taken this approach of actually combining I guess the easiest way to frame it is like social data on all the contributors of the DAO. So we have a system that's called Vibe Dust. And when you enter the Kaddex DAO, first you have to connect your wallet essentially to your social profile. And from there you can begin to create contributions, complete bounties, and generally perform work for the DAO.
When you say social profile, do you mean Twitter or something? We're
using Discord for now.
Okay.
We're also exploring other options that are a little possibly more decentralized, more secure at the actual like application layer. That could look in something like Matrix or Riot or another similar system. But when users contribute, the community ultimately is going to decide like how those contributions impact the overall state of Kaddex. So this could be if someone goes and builds like an amazing analytics dashboard for the front end of Kaddex that like integrates all of the pools, reads like cross-chain data and puts something together. That's obviously a major contribution. And the community could then recognize them by sending them Vibe Dust, which sort of elevates their social and contributive ranking within the DAO. When it comes to the actual permission structure, we also have this role architecture. Initially, everyone starts in role 1, But through community elections, they can be elevated to higher up roles, which grant additional permissions in the DAO. One of those roles being, of course, the ability to submit on-chain proposals. So all of these like social systems play together with actual on-chain data to form a DAO that's really focused on creating a trustworthy community. DGov, in my eyes, is very much about this idea of understanding the actions of everyone around you and how it affects the overall system. So by giving all of these users a visual and also on-chain metric of how everyone else is contributing, the DAO as a whole can make much more informed decisions about the long-term vision of Kaddex, how actions are impacting the protocol, and everything there. So it's a relatively complex system that's pretty much completely community run from the Vibe Dust standpoint. It's not something we've really seen anywhere else, but we believe that this is definitely a step forward in terms of DGov and how people can actually approach not only community building but actual like operations of DAOs.
Yeah, and importantly, this, when we did all this research on DAOs and how the problems DAOs were facing, how they had to handle certain situations, we really came to understand that there is no good and well-encompassing DAO that doesn't require off-chain action, right? So there's a reason why businesses are effective at executing. They have silos of skills and stratifications of roles, and all of those things drive operational efficiency, right? And so we came to the realization that the DAO absolutely needs to have a legal structure that enables token holders to take off-chain action so that it's more than just, a DAO treasury that can make decisions on protocol that currently exist, but also to fund DeFi's future, right? And to actually drive real change. So all of this Discord structure that Grant talked about has this on-chain aggregator that is a smart contract that makes off-chain information on-chain. So it has all this roles and permission structure that becomes on-chain permissions for operating the DAO. So it is completely set up to very naturally turn into an organization.
Hey everyone, I want to say a big thank you to Yield App for sponsoring this podcast. Yield App is an innovative digital asset wealth platform that allows you to earn passive income on the world's leading digital assets. Now, what we really like about Yield App is it's a licensed fintech company built by a team with a strong background in traditional finance. Yield App offers instant asset conversions, fiat on-ramp, auto compounding, and security features such as activity log, transaction history, and more. So you simply deposit your digital assets and click earn to start receiving daily rewards. And if you're a corporate client, Yield App offers a security treasury for all your digital assets. Its dedicated relationship management team is on hand 24/7 to facilitate a stress-free experience. This is one of the questions I had for you, which sort of feeds into this point. So to start something in this space, you need funding. And in order to get funding, you need to be a business. But a decentralized platform is not a business. And I think you found a way to connect the two there, which is super interesting. But how do you, and so my follow-up question to that also is like, how have you managed to fund this thing? Because obviously you have costs and stuff. So
I was just going to say, I think a decentralized structure can be a business. We often compare what a traditional business looks like. Like, let's say you form like an LLC, you hire employees, you perform work, you launch a product. That's a traditional centralized business. But those exact same actions can be taken in a decentralized manner. You don't necessarily need to be like an aggregate, like one singular like entity to perform these things. It can be an amalgam of users working together to perform actions. I think what Nick was saying also is that by forming this actual legal structure for the DAO, we've basically combined this ability to have like a truly decentralized community working to actually build Kaddex with a traditional business structure and all the benefits that brings. Yeah, I just wanted to.
Yeah, it's just to
extend.
extend on that, Grant. So one of the things that you said about the way that you're structuring this and your use of, I think you're calling it vibe dust, which I love that name, by the way, is how certain are you that the way that you structured it is going to protect you from bad actors? Because I think that's always a problem in this space, isn't it? When you create something that's completely decentralized, it's community run, there's always the risk that somebody tries to get into it for malintention.
Sure.
Is that something that you can sort of build fixes for on the fly?
Definitely.
How you kind of looking out for that sort of thing?
Yeah. So a lot of the ways that, well, I mean, there's with every DAO structure and every sort of form of governance outside of like a direct one-to-one fully KYC'd vote platform like we would have in the United States or like any voting country on the planet, it's very hard to actually prevent gamification of voting systems. With majority rules, let's say like you simply need to have a big enough bag to buy a big enough stack of tokens to say, I'm going to control every single vote, which is obviously problematic. Is that basically implies that one user should be able to enter a system and say, I have enough money to run this system. I know what's best for it, which is a very extrinsic form of thought. When you relegate down voting to who simply has the most money, it really turns into, how can I use my money to make more money at the expense of possibly other people's money? And when you have a bunch of people who aren't necessarily possibly the most financially well off, they still want to build something, they still want to contribute to a system, and they still want to have a voice. You need to balance those scales. What I've seen also a lot of sort of DeFi and crypto is this like weird elitist circle where all the people who are already in DeFi have this like, I don't want to say like hoity-toity attitude, but they feel that, yes, I'm in DeFi, I decide how things run. Which when we're going for mass adoption and bringing in this entire Web 2 culture into Web 3, basically says that those people shouldn't have a voice because they didn't have time enough to get involved with the system to begin with. So this system it's much more equitable in a way for how it actually allows people to approach it. And then on top of that, to talk about the safety features, there's a lot of features within the actual like vibe dust governance, which can be used to identify like malicious or bad actors. Because all vibe dust is actually visible when it comes to voting. Like when a vote goes on chain, there's going to be metrics present to indicate what the percentage of like positive vibe dust versus negative vibe dust is. And that actually can give the community at large a better indication of like the trust factor of that vote. If there's a vote with like a massive amount of votes for it, but very little positive vibe dust, then it's clear either that one, that vote is introduced by someone who isn't an intrinsic contributor of the community, or two, that someone has tried to game the system and spin up a bunch of bots to introduce something. Then a sortition can be called, which is essentially a way of comparing it to like jury duty or something. It's like a random selection of people from the community. Ironically, I just got jury duty this week. Great.
Good luck.
Which I'm not happy about, but I love DGov, so I don't know how to,
Anyway, balance those two things. I don't reconcile that situation.
Is it compulsory in the States? Do you have to do it if you're called up?
Yeah, you do, unless you make like a really good case for why you shouldn't. But I think
it's the same
it's...
I was going to say, let's just hope it's a really juicy case. At least let's hope it's an entertaining one.
Yes, I hope so. But
it's not like some traffic
offense.
But I do feel that there are a lot of safety mechanisms built into the DAO to actually prevent malicious and bad actors from overtaking the system as a whole, which is really important.
Right, and I think it's also just one of the biggest challenges that DeFi has generally is just that image of trust and building something which, if you want to go for mass adoption, the first thing that you've got to do is show that you are a platform which is it is providing security, and you can be trusted, but especially when this is, you know, people's money. So it's it's a complex thing. I love the way that you guys are tackling this head on. It's definitely unique.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to, you know, we've created a lot of different metrics and protocols that can all be used to control how the DAO performs, and we're gonna leave that fairly open-ended, right? We don't want it to be something as simple as just propose, vote, and execute. We want it to have a lot of data that the people of the DAO can use to determine how decisions are made, and leave it up to them. So we're really trying to arm them and empower them as much as possible.
It's always fascinating to talk to people about building things in the decentralized space, because nobody's thought about it the way that you guys have. And I don't know how long it took to come up with this architecture and how long the planning took, but kudos for you for doing that, because, you know, if you really pull this off, I think it's going to be a world first, which is really exciting. So one of the questions I've got a couple of questions from the audience, actually. So these are people that are part of, I think, one from our community and one from your community. So I've pulled out a couple of questions. So one of the questions was around the wallet that you're building, the X wallet. So they're asking, is my crypto safer in hot wallet or hardware wallet, and how does the X wallet work? And we haven't spoken about the wallet, so maybe we could talk about that first and then answer that question if you want.
Yeah, so the X wallet is going back to the discussion of DeFi really trying to make it user accessible as kind of our core goal. It was obvious to us that, you know, with a multi-chain architecture, that's going to be something we have to control from the very front end of the user experience, which is what X Wallet is. It is our wallet that we've developed that is currently a web extension wallet, just like MetaMask. That is going to be our way of making sure that the user never has to really worry about how to interact with applications on Kadena. You know, we're going to be constantly working to make sure that it abstracts all of the complexities of the multi-chain architecture away from the user. In terms of safety, so with any web extension wallet, your keys are held locally in local storage, so it's not necessarily the safest option. So it's meant for agility, it's meant for usability, so that somebody can use it, you know, in their daily interactions in crypto. If you are looking for a safe option, always hardware wallet is the way to go. Something where the keys are completely isolated from outside exposure. So the X wallet is certainly going to act as that intermediary between everything in the ecosystem and its real role to make it as simple and user nice as possible.
Yeah, it's brilliant. That's brilliantly answered. I'm always surprised on this show. I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years. I'm always surprised when we get members of the community that've been around for a long time asking what's safer, you know, a hardware wallet or an exchange. So the answer's always the same. But yeah, that's useful. We also had a question in from CryptoQueen_88 on Twitter, which is just a question around legislation and. Are you guys concerned about it? Is there anything which you feel might be coming down the road? I mean, how are you preparing for how things might change?
You know, this is something that, you know, I in particular have spent just about as much time on legal calls as I have on, development calls.
Right. Yeah.
Leading into this, we really, really wanted to make sure this was done right. And, you know, we've talked about sustainability, and the legal aspect of it was key to making sure that what we create will last on into the ecosystem's future, right? We really want to be the hub of DeFi on Kadena. So this is why we've taken this approach of creating a Swiss association that is the Kaddex DAO that will own all intellectual property for all the DeFi that we create. So we've learned from different problems like what Uniswap had, where they owned the Uniswap Labs company owned the front end of the DEX. So the government saw it as them controlling access to certain tokens on the markets. We've learned from DYDX and their structure that has driven us to have this Kaddex DAO Swiss Association that has a governing body of individuals that can create off-chain actions as determined by the majority of token holders. But strategically, they will own everything. They will own the website, the front end, they will own the back end support structure, they will own the code for all of the DeFi stuff we produce. And that's going to be really important because as we go along and, create more DeFi protocols and push them under DAO control, Kaddex DAO will be kind of the core of the ecosystem for DeFi on Kadena. And they will kind of guide it into the future. I don't want to say that Kaddex as a company, engineering company, has the vision for the community, and I really want them to be the ones that guide that. In so much as, we're talking about a young ecosystem, what protocols do they want to see next? And, we will go build those and push them under their control. And so I really want, that's sustainability in my mind, right? It is, again, back to that Bitcoin ideal of for the people, by the people, and as driven by what the users want.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It's an interesting way to have a roadmap as a company. A lot of Web2 businesses, they sort of know what they're going to be building a year, 2 years in advance. But whenever we speak to companies or projects in the DeFi space, it's very much community led, and that roadmap changes day by day depending on how certain features are weighted or what people want. Just to sort of wrap things up today, a question which I kind of like to ask some of our guests about their sort of like their personal views on where this space is going, and if there's anything in particular that you're really excited about. There's a lot of great stuff going on at the moment. Is there anything that you see sort of a couple of years down the road, and maybe how adoption changes? Is there anything that you're sort of really looking forward to?
Yeah, I think for myself, as kind of a techno geek, I look at what Kadena offers, and I have since the first time I read the white paper. And I see this opportunity for Web2 business logic to finally come to fruition on blockchain, and have users that don't know that they're using a blockchain, right? From their point of view, they don't need to. So I see this pent up energy that is Kadena with projects starting to launch, and I think that we're going to see this wave of projects that are basically, blockchain projects that we've seen before, just implemented on Kadena with, some iterative changes to take advantage of scalability. But then the real next wave is going to be this wave of Web 2 that comes into Kadena and starts building on Kadena. And I think that in terms of, my eagerness to be the DeFi hub of Kadena, I see a lot of that coming through Kaddex, and my excitement is both in, seeing Kaddex facilitate some of that growth, but also just seeing the technology transpire and seeing how people come up with crazy ideas to make use of this multi-chain architecture.
Yeah, I love that too. I kind of, when I look at what Kadena are building or what they've built, in fact, it kind of, for me, it's reminiscent of the early days of like cloud computing and AWS. It was that kind of that excitement, that palpable excitement that people were like, my God, these things that were once ideas are now possible. And it's sort of kind of got that similar feel. I'm sort of looking forward to seeing, especially now since they've launched this builders grant scheme. That's just going to completely change the game for developers in this space.
It's so true.
I have some thoughts on this as well. And actually, when you asked that question, an analogy immediately came to mind. And Nick knows I'm famous internally for my really good analogies.
That's why we love an analogy.
There is this incredibly good pizza place in Oakland, California. It's right on Grand Ave. If you guys ever happen to make it to Oakland, you have to go. But it's a co-op. And a co-op means, for people outside the loop, a co-op is essentially a DAO, except centralized. All the employees are owners of that pizza place. They are completely invested, one, not only in the business's success through making really good pizza, but also their own personal success in having sustainable and reasonable employment for themselves. Compare this to like a large scale pizza chain like Domino's or Papa John's or Little Caesars. Like they're everywhere. You can get pizza from them at at your beck and call. I could order a pizza and have it here in like 20 minutes, but the pizza's probably not that good. And I know that the employees working there probably aren't having the best time working there. Working conditions are, not necessarily the best. The employees have no say over the business itself. And as such, they're not really incentivized to ensure the long-term success of that business. It's just a job for them. So when we look at this idea of a DAO, and really what a DAO is it's completely decentralized co-ops where the success of these businesses is predicated by the users themselves and is only limited by how much work they're willing to put in to see everyone's mutual success in that system. We actually are really moving into a completely new way of looking at work. Traditionally, co-ops are expensive to run because, one, you're dealing with the overhead costs of a business, but when you're taking care of your employees, it's generally a little bit more expensive than a company that isn't going to take care of its employees. Web3 enables this mutual ownership without insane overhead, without this like overbearing cost on like what a storefront might look like or any of these other potential negatives. And so DAOs really revolutionize how we actually look at people's ability to spin up and create businesses that are shared with other people and help and developed by a group of like-minded people, all while still retaining these incredible and traditional benefits like health insurance there's amazing decentralized companies out there that are providing health insurance for DAOs, but also like salaries, healthcare, maternity leave, paternity leave. All of these benefits are still possible in DAOs, and in fact are probably going to be better. A person is likely to be better off working for a DAO or a co-op than a traditional company because of the mutual care that everyone in that organization has for everyone else. So I'm just like so excited about this idea of DGov and what it can do for everyone. And I think Kadena is a great place to experiment with it because of, one, how scalable it is, which implies that you can run an infinite number of DAOs on Kadena, but also the number of products that can be launched there is near infinite as well. And when we're onboarding all of these cool Web2 companies who are looking to explore and share ownership with their employees, Kadena is just such a natural fit. And I'm just so excited to be doing all of this DGov stuff on Kadena itself.
I love that. The world is ready for more of that, for sure. We need a change, and I hadn't really thought about it so philosophically as you have. And that's made me excited too. So I'm excited to see what gets built and how that changes people's work lives and business lives.
Yeah, and just to cover off a point that you guys mentioned earlier on. So you're saying that the official launch for Kaddex is it a week's time, 2 weeks time?
Oh God, I wish.
Oh, that would be so cool. If you speak it, it shall be true.
Good timing for the podcast, wouldn't it?
They call it telling the truth in advance. Right, yeah.
No, so we're, like I said earlier, we're more than neck deep in this audit. Luckily, nothing of significance has been found, but I really want to give a little breathing room between, the end of our audits, which, should be in the next, few weeks actually, and then enough time to make any sort of last polishing changes before we release to the public. But I think, we've made some decisions internally to, do things like launch a little bit of a test and a bounty program so that, people can get using the protocol, because as we know, the greater public has a knack for breaking things that
They're
that
great
those
at
auditors they're really great at it.
So good at it.
So some exciting things coming up. It's just we're like almost to the top of this mountain, and I don't think anybody's more excited for a release than the team themselves, because they've just been driven.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it's no mean feat what you guys have pulled off, and congratulations. I personally love what you guys are doing. I love the reason why. We're going to absolutely support you guys through the launch. When you know the date, please do come to us and let us know. We'd love to give you guys a shout out around that time. Just for our listeners that kind of tuned in now, that sort of, you know, we're not sure when this date is. How can they get involved with the community?
Join our Discord. It's just discord.gg/Kaddex. Follow us on Twitter @KaddexOfficial. We do have a Telegram. It's read only. I think it's t.me/KaddexOfficial or whatever.
Sensible.
There is no other Telegram group for Kaddex. That is the only one.
Okay.
I'm anti-scam.
Yeah, okay. And presumably the Kaddex team will never ask you to send them 1 ETH, and you'll send them 2 back.
In fact, I would ask you to not use ETH.
Okay, right. So. Okay. Well, yeah. Great point. If for no other reason.
If a frogman out there asks you to do something with ETH, he's impersonating me.
Yeah, that's a bad frog. Okay, well, awesome. Well, guys, it's a great place to wrap it up. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Love what you guys are doing, and as I say, we're going to support you through the launch, and I'll be watching closely.
Yeah, really appreciate it, you guys. Like I said, I love talking everything Kadena and Kaddex. So yeah, anytime.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could leave a review wherever you're listening. This really does help and allows other people to find us online. You can keep up to date with new releases of the podcast by subscribing and following us on Twitter or Instagram for the latest crypto-related news. Information provided by Crypto Pulse via this podcast, website, social media channels, and any other medium does not constitute financial advice, investment recommendations, or any other type of advice whatsoever. The Crypto Pulse team are not professional financial advisors. Trading and purchasing cryptocurrencies do carry risks, and anybody wishing to partake in such activities should seek professional advice.